G'day everyone, welcome to another video by myself, Andrew DFT. Now today we do have a special video. Well, you already know because you've read the title and you've seen the thumbnail and yeah. So yes, it is a Star Wars video and it is about the Clone Trooper DC-15 standard blaster. So to show you right off the bat, this is what you're going to be achieving by the end of this tutorial. A very simple and basic but very effective DC-15 standard blaster. Now of course you can see this is just made from foam and cardboard, but when you flip it over and you paint it up, you can get a really nice looking prop that you can be very happy with. And frankly, I'm really liking this. It's got nice bulk to it, it's good sturdiness, and it definitely looks the part for what you're trying to achieve. And the best part about all this is you're only going to need one sheet of foam. You're not even going to need the full sheet, you're just going to need about half of it, and a cardboard tube, so yeah. Now this tutorial has come about because I did my Clone Scout cosplay. You guys really liked the rifle and I said, hey, I will try and do my best to bring you a tutorial. And frankly, this tutorial is going to be a lot better than the one I used in my photo shoot, which of course was the one you can currently see on screen. Very happy with how it turned out, and there will be a web series on that costume coming very shortly. So if you want to build your own, you most definitely can. So to give you guys an idea of difficulty levels, I'll put it on my face at the moment, or just below it. This is going to be about a 4 out of 10. It's a very simple and very easy build, so you guys shouldn't have any issue doing it. But with that said, we're going to jump right in. Alright, so this tutorial is going to involve a bunch of different materials, but all very basic stationery, as seen on screen. First thing you're going to do is grab the templates. Like I said, you can download those for free via the PDF in the description box below. Now what we're going to do is start to assemble the template. You can grab the main core piece and sellotape all the required pieces together. So we should have this main form here. What you're going to do is then create 3 different pieces and being sure to flip one of them so that way there's 2 left and 1 right, or other way around. Then what you can do is go ahead and actually cut these pieces out of the foam so that way they're all freestanding. Do your best to make sure the blade goes down on a 90-degree vertical cut. That way when they piece all the pieces together, they should sit relatively flush. If they don't and you do have some weird kind of disjointed edges, you can go back and actually clean them up with a nice sharp craft blade, or just push them down with your thumb. As it is quite malleable, it should bend into that position, but for the most part it should be all good. Now you will notice that we do have some seam lines going on here, but we don't need to worry about those too much because we will cover up majority of it. You can also then seal it later on as some additional steps. But what we're going to do now is we're going to grab the main form template. We're actually going to cut it in half, so that way we have these 2 sections here. We're going to then take the template and then make 2 new forms of it. Both will be a left and a right, so make sure you flip the template. Then what you're going to go do is add in all these additional spaces. To do that, we'll break the template even further and we'll add in this top line you can see here. We are going to actually cut this piece off like you are watching me do now, and we're actually going to make it a bit thinner. To do that, we're going to need to add a depth line, which is about halfway through the foam. Once we've got that depth line added in, which you can simply just draw with a straight edge and a pen, you can then cut it in half. This of course has now made it less than the entire thickness, so we can then glue the main core of the piece onto the actual form and it should slot in pretty well, and then you can go back and glue the additional smaller piece in as well. It should slot in perfectly as this was all using our previous template. Next we're going to grab the actual handle piece. This is of course the area that we need to bevel, so to do that we're going to actually trim off the edges that you can see marked in the hash. You might have a bit difficulty trying to translate this onto the actual foam, so you might be better off just drawing it in freehand. I did that myself, so you can copy as well. Then what you're going to do is add in a depth line, which can be a quarter of the way through the foam. It's not too extreme, it's just going to sit in there to allow us to really grab the blade and actually trim off those edges to give us the nice beveled look that we're after. Just take your time and slowly go through it. Once you've completed that stage, we can start to add some more detail to the handle section. What we'll do is we'll grab the template and we'll cut out the internal part you can see here. It's a strangely marked out shape. Not a square, but it does have 5 sides, so a strange pentagon or something? I don't know. What you can do is grab the template, be sure to flip it onto flip it so you have 2 different sides on that piece of foam, and we're using the nice thinner foam here, the 1mm or so, or whatever thickness you have that isn't like an absurd large thickness. All you need to do is of course mark out using the template with the negative space where this should sit, and then simply glue it into position. Nothing too difficult and all too easy. Then what we're going to do is we're going to actually add some more detail by using the negative spacing on the template. What we're doing is we're grabbing the top section, the bridge of this rifle that we actually used before, and we're going to use the negative spacing, which I've just done on screen, and apply it in position using a pen. Then of course what we're going to do is grab a blade and we're actually going to score the line. If you haven't scored a line before, it's literally cutting through the top layer of the foam. You're not cutting all the way through, you're just breaking the surface. Now we're going to start adding a bit more raised detail to give it a bit more of a 3D perspective. So what we're going to do is we're going to break apart this template here, cutting it from the main core, and we're going to make 2 copies of it. Remember to flip the template so you have a left and a right on the thinner foam. Then what we're going to do is we're going to simply just glue that whole slab into position. It should slot in there perfectly with the current form of the main core foam, so you shouldn't have any issue in that. We'll leave that for now. We'll actually go start to work on the magazine, so grab this part of the template that you can see and the paper, cut it free, and then make 2 sections. You will need to flip it, of course, so we have that left and the right, and then just simply glue those 2 rectangles together. They should meet together pretty flush. If it doesn't, trim it so it kind of seamlessly comes together. But then what we need to do is we're going to bevel these edges. So to do that, we'll add a depth line and a trim line, so that way it should look like that. Then of course, grab your nice sharp craft blade. Please make sure it's sharp, otherwise you'll have horrible edging. And then go ahead and slice those off. You will need to do it on all 4 sides, and be sure that you are doing it on the length side, not the vertical smaller parts. Copy what's on screen, you'll do fine. Next, we're going to quickly add a tiny piece of detail that sits on the end of the magazine. You will see it, so do make sure it's a nice, as good rectangle as you could possibly achieve, but you can just use the negative spacing of the template paper to make a foam one out of the 1mm thickness or whatever you're using, and then simply glue that whole magazine into position once the little piece has been glued onto the extension of the magazine. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of detail on the other side. We're simply just using the template rectangle section and making a duplicate out of the foam. This is just going to give it another raised edge, nothing too fancy, it just gives it a bit more 3D form, so when you paint it up, it'll look nice and pretty. Okay, onto some more detail. So what we're going to do is grab the template, the top line section that went above the gun and we left behind. You're going to then draw out a new piece of foam, a big slab of foam, maybe about 1.5 inches thick, and at the same length as that negative template. Then what you're going to do is just simply glue it on top like so, making sure the back of it hits where it is on the butt of the gun, and that should just cover most of the seams and give a tiny piece of detail up the top. But wait, there's more. We have another extra piece of detail that we have to add up the top. Of course, this is a little iron rail sight, or I have no idea what you call it, just a tiny piece of metal that sits up the top. All we need to do is cut out the template, transfer it onto the foam, and then of course we'll add a depth line in about 90% through the foam, just so we can trim it and cut off the textured sides, and that way it sits nice and smooth on both those faces. So that's it. Hopefully you guys didn't have any issue and you were able to follow along. Of course, all we need to do now is jump into part 2 and continue the build. If you're here for the first time, considering subscribing. I produce a lot of cool content like this, and I got plenty more to go coming sooner. So, thank you very much for watching. Go and enjoy part 2.